All right, we'll go ahead and move on over to the NBA as a super short offseason is already in full swing. We'll tell you about several trades that have already happened soon, but one looms large tonight with huge implications. We told you about the Houston Rockets issues last week, and not long after that, Rockets superstar James Harden is now formally requested a trade. Reports say he wants out, and he even turned down a $50 million per year extension. This comes with several Rockets players wanting a change of scenery and a complete new front office taking over. The Brooklyn Nets appear to be Harden's preferred destination for now, teaming up with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The teams have reportedly had some contact, but nothing's really resulted so far. So, Drink, if Harden's set on getting out, should the Rockets work with him, or should he just take the best deal no matter what?
Well, here's the deal. He's definitely set on getting out, so the Rockets know that. And James Harden got a no trade clause, so you have to kind of work with him because you need him to waive that no trade clause. On top of that, and here's the deal: why wouldn't you want to work with him? Because if you think about this, right, that means James Harden is going to do enough work to make sure you get stuff back so he can get to where he wants to go. Who know the players better than players? Like, I got it. You owners, management, they do their job. But these players know what's going to happen way before management even gets involved. Like, it's nothing for James Harden to get on the phone with Kevin Durant and be like, listen, I want to come down there and play. What do you think? Do you think that could happen? KD say, all right, let me check some things out. We want you here, so we're going to do what we need to do. Won't they won't? He tell his agent, won't they won't, on down the line, and then we find out, and here we are. So to answer your question, I think for the Rockets to get to where they're going, which looks like a complete rebuild at this point, you want to work with Harden because it makes that ugly. When you try to get rid of Westbrook, now teams remember that. Players remember that. And now it's only going to make your job harder to get rid of Westbrook if you make your job harder to get rid of Harden. You got to let these guys kind of go. Like what OKC did for Westbrook, prime example. Okay, we'll take Chris Paul's contract if y'all take Westbrook's, and then we'll figure out the rest. That was a very clean cut. Both teams cut their guys. It wasn't nothing crazy. It wasn't no disrespect thrown around. And it worked out for OKC at the end because they didn't make a big riff about it. Now come here. Listen, James Harden did a lot in a Houston uniform. Go ahead and get a man what he want. This ain't a guy you drafted number 1 overall and he was a bum for majority of his contract and now going to have the audacity at the end of the contract to say what he want. No. This ain't that guy. This is an all-timer here. This is also a player that if you can go up to any one of the other 29 teams and say, I got James Harden on the trade block and act like they won't stop what they're doing at that time, whatever they're doing, feeding the baby, out eating dinner with the wife, in church, it don't matter. Act like they don't stop. Oh, shoot. Oh, what happened? You see him with that one finger up going through church doing, hey, so you think we get him? Hey. This is James Harden we talking about. So, yes, they should work with him. They should try to get whatever he's trying to accomplish, get it done quick, fast, and in a hurry. Now, what I like to focus on is how did we get here? How did the Rockets get to the spot where their 2 best players said we want out? And this goes into the show that we had Friday. Listen, this has been butchered up first and foremost. But this is what happens when you make moves and do not include your best player in the moves. You think the Lakers making moves and don't tell LeBron? Yeah, all right. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, good luck with it. You think Golden State make moves and don't talk to Steph? Yeah, I don't think so. You think Brooklyn gonna make a move and don't talk to KD? Let's be real here. But this is what Houston did. This is how the ball got rolling when you can't get aligned with D'Antoni. When Daryl Morris steps away, and then you just love James Harden and the owner. That's just not a good recipe. The owner signs checks. That should be it. Because when they do more, then you turn into Jerry Jones. Get out the way. You want to be all in the videos. Now I want to talk about James Harden turned down $50 million. He was going to be the first player that made $50 million a year if he would have, accepted the extension. When I heard he declined that told me one thing. You can go ahead and give up all that. We're going to throw boatloads of money at players and we're going to keep them. No. The pressure right now is at an all-time high for superstar players. They know now that they're measured by rings. Like James Harden, this dude damn near averaged 50 points a game. Like, he's most likely is a Hall of Famer already if you just look at how he can change the game of basketball. But what do we always talk about? He runs out of gas in the postseason. He don't got a ring. What has he done for, Houston lately? And now James Harden like, listen, here's the deal. I don't give a damn about the money. I want to go to a contender. Matter of fact, I want to go to a specific contender. Get me over there to the Nets. I get out the Western Conference, so you don't have to see me as much. I leave the Western Conference. I go to the Eastern Conference, but I'm going to a contender. It's time for a ring. And not only that, you have the biggest star on Brooklyn saying, I want him over. Let's get this done. Holla at your boy. That's my boy. Hold on, but it's a problem, folks. What's the problem? Well, here's the problem. The other star on the team is like, whoa. Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. Do we need James Harden? I don't think we need him. I think we got a championship caliber team as is. Why do we need James Harden? And then KD said, well, Kyrie, you the one said we don't need a coach. Why do we need a coach? Like, so you got all this stuff going on. Like, what is happening here? Now, to interject my personal opinion, I think it's too much. I think it's entirely too much to put the 3 superstar. You don't need that much to win a championship. You need something, but you don't need that much. I do think they can win without him. And to George's point, because he has always made this point for both teams when I talk about the Nets and the Bucks, listen, you do know you got to have a minimum of a certain amount of players on a team to play a basketball game. So you sitting here giving up the form, 2-way players don't count towards the roster. You got to have actual NBA contracts on the bench. So if you give away 6 players, 9 picks, and whatever else that I do think is James Harden is worth, if you give away all that, then just know you got to fulfill the rest of that roster. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. So in that part of the question, I would think Houston would be out for the best deal because, like, we need some pieces back too. We ain't asking, for a superstar talent, actually they are asking for Kyrie or KD. But, we want some things back too. But for Houston, for James Harden, I think the Nets is the best pick. For Houston, I think it's other teams that can give them a lot more than what Boston can. I think it's a team out there that's willing to give you, the Paul George times 2. You know what I'm saying? Like a blockbuster deal. Because James Harden is a blockbuster player, so you get a blockbuster deal, right? But you know how this goes. The NBA is a business. Houston gonna look out for their own thing. I would think they would listen to what James want. But let's talk about the aftermath of this. Let's say James Harden does get traded to Brooklyn. Oh, God. Man, what are we talking about here? James Harden, KD, and Kyrie? I don't see it working. But what are we talking about here on paper? Like, what are we talking about here? I can't wait for the NBA to come back. But enough of my rambling. I feel James Harden here. It's time to move on. It's time for me to spread my wings somewhere else. I like KD finally stepping up to the recruiting side of things and saying, hey, I would like to have this player. I would like to play with him. And on a matter of time will tell. If I'm Brooklyn, though, I think I consider trading Kyrie. I really do. What are we doing? I don't think Kyrie and James Harden are going to get along. So, whatever. I don't think that's gonna work. KD can work, but I don't think that's gonna work. I would trade Kyrie to Houston, get James Harden, and then let the rest be the rest. But to answer your question, the Rockets should work with James Harden to get this done as smooth as possible.
Yeah, let's start with the Rockets and where they appear to be headed, and it does kind of provide a nice bridge from where we were Friday with some of the things we were seeing, mostly with Russell Westbrook, but we also we're beginning to see some indications that perhaps it could be James Harden maybe exiting the building too, and now it appears, as I suspected, that we could be headed for a full-scale reset. Because I think that's given where they are. You've made a change at general manager. You've made a change at head coach. You've been in this. You've had the James Harden show, plus whoever else is there, whether it be Dwight Howard, whether it be Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook, and other ancillary pieces, and it just hasn't worked. So at some point, I think it is necessary to kind of tear it down. I think that's where they're at right now. So, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with where Drink started. Given the no trade clause, that kind of puts you in a bit of a bind. Any trade you make, any team you're looking at, I mean, James Harden with his no trade clause, I mean, he's got the right to say no. Now, at the same time, could there be some wiggle room? I guess it depends on how much James Harden wants to be out of there. I mean, I'd have to believe he wants to be out of there some type of way because, I mean, $50 million – that's a whole lot of money to turn down. So there has to be some desire to get out of there. I don't know how set he is on Brooklyn, but Brooklyn is one that made somewhat sense. But when you take into consideration what they already have with Kyrie and KD, I'm with Drink on that. That seems to be a bit much. When you talk about the forming some of these, so whether you want to call them super teams or whether you want to call them big threes, the pieces you have to look at them and see if they make sense together. And I think really in the case of Kyrie and James Harden, there's only one basketball, and those guys need the basketball. KD has shown throughout his career, he doesn't need the ball the whole game to be effective. He's going to get 30 no matter what, assuming that he comes back, at any type of the player he once was. And he's shown, like you say, when he was at Golden State, he can fit into a star-loaded team. And at the end of the day, KD's not going to go anywhere because he's a better player than James Harden and Kyrie Irving. So I'm intrigued by the possibility. I don't know if Houston has any interest in Kyrie Irving. But maybe could we see a swap there? I mean, I think that's something you'd have to consider because, I mean, you bring up the fact of, the kind of the mental makeup of these guys. And you talk about KD. I think KD, as you say, is he'd like to reunite with James Harden. Kyrie, maybe he's not looking forward to this. Well, Kyrie, I mean, who needs you? You can get on out of here because, I mean, James Harden would be a sizable upgrade if we're being honest about this. But I think all three of those guys together, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. And as I talked about, when we saw the Steve Nash hiring, and then you have Mike D'Antoni in there, is anyone going to play defense? I mean, that'd be one of my question marks. Kyrie's not known as a defender. James Harden's made improvements in his defense, but he's not a guy that you're going to say, hey, take the other team's best perimeter player. I don't think that's something you'd want to have happen. And then the last thing I'd throw at you is, again, to go back to Steve Nash, I think you're putting him in an awful difficult position if you load up him with Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. That is an absurd amount of not only talent but ego to manage for any head coach.
I don't think he finished the season. If you do that, I don't see how he finished the season unless D'Antoni really pulling some crazy strings in the background. But I don't see.
That's a lot of ego to manage for the most qualified of head coaches. I mean, I think Phil Jackson would be challenged with all that, and so I'm not sure if that's something Steve Nash wants to sign up for. Even though, I mean, it would be incredibly I guess, entertaining to watch. But again, like when you're thinking about James Harden and Kyrie Irving on the court at the same time, I mean, something's got to give. And the last quick point about that, when you talk about three guys like that come together, one guy's got to sacrifice. You remember Miami. Chris Bosh sacrificed more than anybody. Which one of those guys becomes the Chris Bosh? I don't think any of them are capable of doing that.
No, that would be. We were talking about that before the show too. The thought of having these three on the same team together is mind blowing. And what I think is one thing that's really interesting is we have to remember Kevin Durant wanted to go to Brooklyn. Like he picked Brooklyn. He knew Kyrie was there. He came over. If you pull that rug out from under him now that they're both healthy and they're ready to get the full season started, I mean, who knows what Kevin Durant's thinking in a given moment, the way he kind of comes and goes, things like that. But I'd be interested to know if Kevin Durant still is locked in on this me and Kyrie together, we're going to go slay the dragon thing, or if it's, I get James Harden, then we'll see Kyrie, get lost, nerd. We don't know which one it is.
To your point, that's what I think. I think last year when he was hurt, it was like, okay, me and Kyrie against the world. Now he's healthy, and he gets the news, we can add James Harden. You heard what Jay just said. James Harden is significantly better than
right.
Kyrie Irving. It's not even close.
At the time, just to add this in, at the time KD made the decision to go to Brooklyn, I don't think anyone could have predicted we'd be at this juncture where James Harden could have been available.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a big monkey wrench into this.
Right. So we really don't know what he's thinking and what they're kind of thinking with that. I would assume that he would still want to kind of run it with what they got, but they would only probably want to do it if they could add Harden. But the thing is, we just saw another trade we'll tell you about in the next segment that pretty much sets the bar that no matter what you get for James Harden, it's going to be a letdown. I mean, first of all, we understand when you trade a player with the kind of value James Harden has, no trade package looks very good. I mean, it's almost always going to be underwhelming. We had like the Anthony Davis trade, when LA sent him, the Pelicans did their deal. And even then it kind of still felt like, like it's Anthony Davis. That's the dude you're getting. But in James Harden is the same caliber of player, if not maybe a little bit higher. I mean, they're both probably around the top 5, but that's a whale of a trade to pull off. And there aren't a ton of teams that have that kind of capital, and the Nets aren't one of them. I mean, the Nets just aren't a team that has all these picks and, without KD or Kyrie moving. And I just don't think the Houston Rockets want to do that. I did check Drink. I don't mean to kind of step on you here, but he does not have a no trade clause. I double checked to be safe. He actually doesn't. Now, to caveat, though, a player like James Harden kind of does, because no team is going to make a deal for him if they know he's not going to want to be there. Like, Charlotte could offer him the world, but are they going to do it if he doesn't want to be there type thing? So sort of does, but technically the Rockets kind of have the cards here, and he's under contract for 3 years left. So I think for Houston, it's an incredibly interesting scenario, because they're a team that most teams either get forced into contention or get forced into rebuilds, right? Like you trip over some guys, some things line up, you get a window, or the window slams shut on your fingers, and then you're rebuilding whether you like it or not. The Rockets feel like they could really go either way. Like they could keep Harden. They've made some other moves this week. They could just they could try to retool a little more standard NBA rotation, try to get back in it, or you could trade Harden, you could trade Westbrook, you blow this whole thing to smithereens, and you start over. And I think it's amazing that this brand new coach, brand new GM have that they have the two buttons sitting in front of them right now, and they're trying to think about which one to push. It's fascinating to see if they're going to try to take on the juggernauts in the West again, because Golden State's back, the LA teams, et cetera, or if
to me, that makes their job harder. Like, why wouldn't you? If you're a new head coach and a new GM, why not just bring in guys that's new with you? Why would you want to keep James Harden and Westbrook? I'm sorry, but like at the end of the day, all they're gonna do is keep reminding you of what was there before you got there. Like,
I guess the one thing I would say is over the last couple of years, there has always been, again, the caveat of you've been fighting the Warriors up until this past season. Okay, and then LeBron and AD decided to go make a team, and okay. But like, it's not like you've just the circumstances have been kind of extraordinary, so it almost feels like, yeah, you fell short, but I mean, how close were you, or how close should you have been? if it wasn't for that. It's the argument of LeBron and his ring, his finals record. Oh, well, you played the Warriors, so does that really count type thing? So it's hard to imagine. But again, it is hard because if you don't trade Westbrook, or even if you do trade Westbrook, that's not a positive value. You're not going to get you're not going to get a haul for Russell Westbrook. You're going to break even. We talked about it last week. You're going to break even is what's going to happen. So if you're doing that, then what do you have left? If you trade Westbrook, what's there? Like, how do you contend? So they got a decision. It's going to be fascinating.